There is a morning ritual capable of transforming even the most chaotic mind in the world into a mind that is absolutely unshakable. It was created based on the teachings of a man who never used a productivity app, never read a self-help book, and never participated in any courses on organization or routine management. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to wake up every day with a completely clear mind? Without that fog of thoughts, without that feeling that you've already started the day owing something to the world. Without needing coffee, motivation, or scrolling on your phone to feel functional, this seems impossible to most people. And that's precisely why most people never get where they want to go. There was a Japanese warrior who lived in the 17th century, fought more than 60 duels, never lost one, and spent the last years of his life alone in a cave, in silence, writing down the principles that guided his mind. That man was called Miyamoto Musashi, and he didn't leave behind a specific morning routine. With schedules, stages, and checklists, what he left behind was a philosophy of how the mind should exist upon waking. It is not just about how to find focus, but how to never lose that focus from the very first moment of the morning. And when you understand this principle, everything changes. The way you start your day, the way you react to adversity, the way you build what you want to build. In this video, I'm going to teach you the morning ritual that will help you build an unbeatable mind. Before we continue, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, do it now. Turn on notifications too, and comment below. What is the biggest problem you face first thing in the morning? This helps me a lot and shows me that you really want to change. Let's get into the video. Chapter 1. The Man Who Survived the Days. Stephen was 23 years old and lived in Texas. He would wake up every day with the feeling that the day had already begun without him. He didn't sleep until late. He woke up relatively early, but waking up and starting the day are two completely different things, and Stephen hadn't learned that yet. The alarm clock rang at 7 a.m. He hit snooze. Second alarm at 7:15 a.m. This time he grabbed his cell phone and opened Instagram, X, and email notifications, unanswered messages from the previous night. Before he had even made his first conscious decision of the day, he was already responding to everyone else's decisions. He made coffee while glancing at his phone. He showered with his mind racing, thinking about what he should have done yesterday. He left the house already in reactive mode, already emotionally in debt. At work, he was a freelance video maker. The story repeated itself. He opened 6 tabs at the same time. He would edit half a video, stop, answer a message, and go back to the video without knowing where I had left off. The day wasn't lived, it was survived. And at the heart of it all was a dream he couldn't shake. Stephen wanted to build his own company, an artificial intelligence startup. He saw the market growing, read about the opportunities, knew he had good ideas. But the project remained in a notepad on his phone, full of drafts that never went anywhere. The problem for Stephen was a lack of structure. He lacked a fixed starting point. Each day began from scratch, as if the previous day had never existed. And the more time passed, the more the frustration grew. Perhaps you recognize yourself in Stephen's story. Perhaps even before the day begins, you've already woken up tired, thinking about 100 things at once, anxious about the fact that another day has started, and everything will repeat itself. And you start the day numbing yourself with your cell phone, with social media. Stephen suffered with this every morning. Until one day everything changed in the worst possible way. Stephen had landed a job as a videographer at a company that really caught his attention. An online education platform focused on high performance and emotional balance, founded by a man named Arata. Arata was a Japanese American, around 50 years old, and owned an online community that taught neuroscience and Japanese philosophies applied to real life. The kind of business Stephen found fascinating, even though he didn't quite understand what was being taught there. He needed that job. His parents needed help at home. And he got the position. In the first few days, everything seemed fine. The atmosphere was unlike anywhere he had ever worked. People arrived on time. Meetings ended on schedule. There was a functional calm in the place that Stephen had never seen before, but the problem is that Stephen's bad habits went to work with him. The same chaotic mornings, the same cell phone in hand before getting out of bed, The same feeling that the day was starting before he was ready for it. And at work, the same distraction. Several projects open at the same time. Deadlines treated as suggestions. Then came the most important launch of the quarter. Arata had planned the launch of a new community module. All the marketing depended on a series of videos that Stephen was responsible for delivering. Clear deadlines, detailed briefings. Everything was on the table, and Stephen was late, not out of laziness, out of chaos, out of distraction, out of that chaotic routine he had never been able to resolve. The videos arrived 2 days late. The launch had to be rescheduled. The company missed a strategic market window. When Arata called Stephen in for a meeting, he entered the room convinced he was about to be fired. He mentally prepared his words to apologize and hand over the equipment, but what happened in that room changed his life forever. Chapter 2. The Conversation. No one expects Arata did not comment on the delay. He looked at Stephen in silence for a few seconds and asked a simple question. "What are your mornings like?" Stephen didn't understand. He expected a reprimand, a performance review, maybe a list of failings. Not this question, but he answered. He talked about the alarms, the cell phone, the distraction, the feeling of always chasing something he never reached. He talked about the business project that never got anywhere, about the frustration of knowing what he wanted and not even being able to start. Arata listened to everything without interrupting. When Stephen finished, he said something that Stephen never forgot. "The problem isn't your ability. It's the state in which you surrender the day to the world before belonging to yourself." Stephen didn't understand immediately. Arata continued, "There's a concept in Japan called Heijoshin, the everyday mind. Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest samurai who ever lived, built his invincibility on this principle. Not on elaborate routines or complex rituals, on the refusal to begin the day in 2 different states." He stood up, went to the window and looked outside for a moment. Musashi never left a manual with schedules and steps for a perfect morning. But everything he wrote in the Book of 5 Rings and the Dokudo points in the same direction. An unbeatable mind isn't built overnight. It is preserved in the morning, because the unbeatable mind never ceases to exist. After that day, Arata made a proposal to Stephen. Every Saturday afternoon, they would meet for a private conversation. Arata would teach him what had taken him decades to learn. Stephen would apply it during the week and return with real questions. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't motivational coaching. It was a direct transmission of a way of life. And in their first conversation on Saturday, Arata began with the principle that underpinned everything. Chapter 3. The First Teaching, Heijoshin. "I'm going to ask you a question," Arata said on the afternoon of the first Saturday. "Have you ever noticed that on days when you have an important meeting, a deadline, or something that really matters, you wake up feeling different?" Stephen thought. "Yes, and on ordinary days you wake up in a fog, slowly, too lazy to even begin." "That's true. That's exactly the problem," Arata said. "You have 2 states, the combat state and the rest state, and you spend the morning trying to migrate from one to the other. This migration costs energy, time, and clarity." He opened a notebook and showed a sentence. "In both combat and daily life, you must be determined yet calm. Your mind must be clear-headed but without prejudice. This is Musashi, the Book of Water." He's not talking about a combat technique. He's talking about a permanent state of being. For Musashi, there was no transition between the moment of rest and the moment of action. There was only one state, present, calm, ready. Stephen frowned. "But how do you maintain that when you wake up?" "The first thing the mind wants is to protect itself in comfort. That's exactly why what you do in the first 60 seconds of the day determines everything that comes after," Arata replied. "Your mistake is that you hand over those 60 seconds to an app's algorithm, and the whole day will follow that pattern. If you keep them to yourself, the whole day will follow a different pattern. This is backed by neuroscience. Researchers studying the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for focus, judgment and impulse control, have discovered that in the first few hours after waking, the brain is in a state of very high plasticity. The first stimuli of the day shape the neurological pattern of the following hours. When you wake up and immediately grab your phone, you hand over this plastic state to reactive mode. The prefrontal cortex begins the day in a defensive position, not a leadership position. Musashi's morning ritual, Arata said, was not a to-do list. It was a refusal. A refusal to wake up in two states. Stephen returned home that Saturday with a simple task. For the next 7 days upon waking, not to touch his cell phone for 30 minutes. On the second day, his hand automatically went to his cell phone before he even realized he was awake. The movement was so automatic that it was startling. It was no longer just an addiction. It had become a neural pattern. The brain had created a sequence, wake up, check phone, consume content, that happened below the level of consciousness. It was on the third day, by then more alert, that Stephen noticed something he had never noticed before. There was a period of 2 to 3 minutes right after waking up when his mind was absolutely quiet. No thoughts about the past or the future, just pure presence, and in all previous years he had ruined that moment with notifications. The following Saturday he told Arata about it. Arata smiled. "You just discovered Zanshin, a central concept in Japanese martial philosophy. Literally translated as mind that remains, awareness that doesn't switch off, a state of total attention without tension. For the samurai, Zanshin wasn't just applied in combat, it was applied to every moment of existence. Musashi practiced painting, calligraphy, and sculpture with the same precision with which he practiced swordsmanship, because he understood that Zanshin was a muscle. And muscles that are not used atrophy. In the first 60 seconds after you wake up," Arata said, "your mind is naturally in Zanshin, because sleep just did that for you. The question isn't how to get into that state, it's how not to destroy it immediately." Roy Baumeister, a psychologist who spent decades studying decision burnout, demonstrated that the capacity to make quality decisions is a finite resource. Each micro-decision consumes a portion of that resource. When you wake up without structure, you start the day making decisions that shouldn't exist. What to answer first, where to begin, or what to prioritize. You waste the mental clarity of the early morning, the most valuable resource of the day, deciding on things that could have already been decided. Musashi never wasted energy deciding what to train. The way had already decided for him. This is the second pillar of the ritual that Arata called the Musashi method. Chapter 4. The Second Teaching, Michi and the Return to the Path. In their third conversation on Saturday, Arata asked a question that left Stephen speechless. "Where do you want to go?" "I want to build an AI company." "No, that's not what I asked. I asked where you want to go." "What's your Michi?" "Michi the way." For Musashi, Michi was not a destination. It was a direction of existence. A direction so clear that each morning, upon waking, there was no doubt about what the next few hours should serve. In the Book of Five Rings, Musashi repeats a phrase with almost obsessive insistence. "You must practice this day and night, not when I feel like it, not when circumstances allow. Day and night." Because for Musashi, the way was not an external commitment. It was an internal identity. He didn't practice swordsmanship because he wanted to become a samurai. He practiced because he was a samurai. The practice was the daily affirmation of who he was. Stephen's problem, said Arata, was that he had dreams, but he didn't have a path. Dreams are destiny. The path is the daily direction. The difference seems small, but it is huge. Those who have a dream wake up every day trying to figure out how to get there. Those who have a path wake up every day doing the next obvious thing. The task for the following week was simple. Stephen had to identify a single thing, a practice, a skill or a project, which if done every morning for 30 minutes before anything else, would move him in the direction of what he wanted to build. He chose to study AI systems architecture, 30 minutes, every morning. Before email, before notifications, before any external demands, the first week was strange. Sitting down to study at 6 a.m. with my mind still foggy felt like a mistake. But something started to change by the third morning. He went to work feeling different, no longer rushed, no longer in debt. He had done something for himself before doing anything for the world, and that changed the texture of the rest of his day. Chapter 5, the third teaching, Fudoshin and the acceptance of reality. On Saturday, during their fourth conversation, Arata arrived with an old notebook in his hand. "Are you familiar with Dokodo?" Stephen had heard the name, but he didn't know what it was. In his final days, Musashi retreated to a cave called Reigando. Alone, without students, without a sword, without comfort. There he wrote 2 texts: the Book of 5 Rings, his strategic philosophy, and the Dokodo, his philosophy of existence. Arata opened the notebook to a marked page, the first precept of Dokodo, the principle that opens everything. Accept everything exactly as it is. Stephen remained silent. Most people start the day resisting. They resist tiredness. They resist the weather. They resist bad news. They resist the work they have to do. And this resistance, before anything happens, consumes an enormous amount of emotional energy. Musashi called the opposite state Fudoshin, the motionless mind, not the mind that is never struck. The mind that is never overthrown. Fudoshin is not indifference. It is the active acceptance of reality as it is, and from that acceptance, the deliberate choice of how to respond to that. For Stephen, this meant one practical thing: stop starting the day negotiating with reality. Tired? That's okay. Tough day ahead? That's okay. Plans changed? That's okay. Reality is what it is. The question is what you do from there. That many people waste time arguing with reality, as if that would solve anything. Some people, after a bad night's sleep, wake up complaining that they didn't sleep well, that they're tired, that they can't concentrate, that they wish they had done things differently. But complaining doesn't change anything. What changes things is action. So instead of complaining, think about action. What can you do to solve the problem? Face the day with courage. Neuroscientist Jill Bolte-Taylor documented something fascinating about emotions. The physiological cycle of an emotion in the human body lasts approximately 90 seconds. 90 seconds for the chemical substance to be released, circulate through the body and be absorbed. Anything that lasts longer than 90 seconds is not the emotion. It is thinking about emotion. When you wake up resisting, it's not the circumstances that drain your energy. It's the story you tell yourself about the circumstances. Musashi understood this viscerally. Before entering any duel, he didn't waste emotional energy wishing his opponent were weaker, that the terrain were more favorable, or that the conditions were better. He accepted what was and designed his strategy based on reality, not on the reality he wished existed. Start the day by accepting, Arata said. Not as resignation, as a foundation. You can't build anything solid on resistance. Chapter 6, the 4th teaching, the refusal to soften. Weeks passed. Stephen was changing, silently and steadily like water shaping stone. But on a Friday everything went wrong, a meeting that went badly, a difficult client, a bad night's sleep. On Friday he woke up late, skipped his morning study, and spent 40 minutes on his phone before getting up. On Saturday he woke up with a familiar feeling, the fog, the debt, the weight. He arrived at the conversation with Arata visibly frustrated with himself. Arata listened and said something unexpected. Musashi never called what he did discipline. Stephen looked at him uncomprehending. Discipline is a word that implies effort against resistance. It implies that there is a part of you that wants to rest and another that forces you to work. Musashi did not operate that way. He went to the bookshelf, picked up a book and opened it to a page. The 4th pillar isn't about what you do in the morning. It's about what you refuse to let happen during the night. The phrase hung in the air. Musashi said, practice day and night. Not because practice never stops, but because the mind never stops. You don't go to a battlefield and then say, now I'm going to rest my warrior skills for a few hours. Skill either exists or it doesn't. The mental state either exists or it doesn't. What Musashi practiced was not the refusal of rest. It was the refusal to let the mind become lax, to allow the state of clarity to dissolve into habits of low consciousness, endless scrolling, passive consumption, directionless emotional reactivity. Rest was sacred. Dissolution was the enemy. The night before the day you failed, Arata asked, what did you do? Stephen thought. I stayed on my phone until midnight. Social media, nothing important. And when you went to sleep, was your mind calm or racing? Accelerated. So the problem wasn't what you did in the morning. The problem was what you allowed to happen the night before. You went to sleep with a chaotic mind and woke up with the same mind. Musashi's morning ritual did not begin in the morning. It started the night before. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist who has spent decades studying what happens to the brain during sleep, has identified something central. Sleep quality is directly determined by mental state in the 60 to 90 minutes before falling asleep. A prefrontal cortex under constant stimulation, notifications, accelerated content, or unimportant decisions, it cannot completely switch off during sleep. The result is not just tiredness. It's a morning when the brain is already in reactive mode, as if it had never truly rested. Musashi didn't have laboratories. He had observation. Decades of self-observation, and the conclusion was the same. Chapter 7. The ritual that no one wrote down, but Musashi lived. In their 8th conversation on Saturday, Arata made a statement that Stephen would remember forever. "I need to be honest with you about something. Miyamoto Musashi left no record of a morning routine. There is no diary with times, sequences of steps or checklists. No biography from that time documents what he did upon waking." Stephen looked at him in surprise. "So everything we talked about, it's a well-founded inference," Arata said, "based on the principles he explicitly documented. In the Book of 5 Rings and in the Dokodo, it is possible to reconstruct what the ritual of a man who lived by these principles completely would have been like. It's not fantasy, it's a deduction, like an archaeologist who reconstructs a city from the fragments he finds." He continued, "And what these principles indicate, without exception, is that Musashi didn't need a morning ritual because he never left the state that a morning ritual should create. This was Heijoshin in its most radical form. He did not live in two mental states, the state of rest and the state of the warrior. He lived solely in one, continuous and permanent. What we've created together in the last few weeks," Arata said, "is what Musashi would teach if he were to teach about his own ritual. The 4 pillars that support the unbeatable mind, not because I invented them, but because each one of them is written in different ways on every page he left behind. First pillar, Heijoshin, waking up without transition, without 2 states, already present from the very first second. Second pillar, Zanshin, the first 60 seconds in silence, preserving the state of full consciousness that sleep provides, before any external stimulus destroys it. Third pillar, Michi, the first hour of the day dedicated to the path, to what truly matters, before any external demands. Fourth pillar, Fudoshin and Dokodo. Start the day by accepting reality as it is, without resistance, without negotiation, building from what exists and not from what one would wish to exist. It's not a routine, it's a state of being." 3 months after that first conversation in Arata's office, Stephen was a different man. Not visibly so to those who didn't know him well. On the outside, he was the same 23-year-old, same job, same city, but inside, the texture of each day had changed completely. "I used to wake up without an alarm most mornings. My body had learned the schedule. I would spend the first few minutes in silence, without my cell phone, letting the clarity of sleep settle in before anything else. Then I would open my computer and study for 30 or 40 minutes. AI systems architecture, the project I wanted to build. No notifications, no email, no world demanding anything. Only then did the day begin, and it began differently. The startup's project had moved from a notepad to a structured document, then a plan, then an MVP, a minimum viable product designed with the same clarity that he was learning to apply to everything. One Saturday, at the end of his conversation with Arata, Stephen hesitated for a moment. Then he said, "I want to show you something." He opened the computer. He presented the project to Arata, an AI-powered automation system for small businesses. 15 minutes, clear, structured with real market data. When he finished, Arata remained silent for a moment. "There's a pricing error," he finally said. Stephen looked at the numbers. Arata was right. "Correct this and send it to me again. Because I have 2 clients who might need this." Arata already knew about the project before that presentation. He had seen Stephen working on it during the week. He had silently watched the transformation. He had waited, not as a test, but as a teacher who knows that the student needs to arrive at it on their own. The presentation was not the moment when Stephen convinced Arata. It was the moment when Stephen became convinced of himself. And there is a fundamental difference between the two. Because an unbeatable mind doesn't need approval to exist. It exists first. Approval comes later, or it doesn't come. It doesn't matter. Musashi fought more than 60 duels. He never waited for his opponent's validation before drawing his sword. The unbeatable mind was already formed before the fight even began. Stephen arrived at the beginning of this story at 23 years old, with big dreams, and a routine that destroyed those dreams before the day even began. Not for lack of intelligence, not for lack of will, for lack of a foundational state. Through the teachings of Arata, based on the principles that Musashi lived by and documented for centuries, he learned 4 things that changed everything. He learned that waking up isn't the same as starting, that the first 60 seconds of the day define the neurological pattern for the following hours, that surrendering those 60 seconds to a notification is surrendering the entire day. He learned that Zanshin, full awareness, doesn't need to be built in the morning. It exists naturally upon waking. The task is simply not to destroy it immediately. He learned that without a Michi, without a clear path, every morning starts from scratch, and those 30 minutes dedicated to what matters before any external demands can change the trajectory of an entire year. And he learned that Fudoshin is not resignation. It is the foundation of everything. Accepting reality exactly as it is not weakness. It is the only honest starting point from which any real construction can begin. Musashi never wrote a morning itinerary with schedules and stages. What he wrote on every page of the Book of 5 Rings and in every precept of the Dokodo was a map of how a mind should exist, not just in the morning, but all the time. An invincible mind isn't built in the morning. It's preserved in the morning, because it never ceases to exist. The question that remains is not, what is my morning routine? The question is, in what state do I surrender my mind to the world, and in what state do I refuse to hand it over? You have the principles in your hands now. What are you going to do with that? If this video made you see your morning in a different way, if you subscribe to the channel and activate the little bell, every week there's new content that can change the way you think, act, and build what you want. And tell me in the comments, which of the 4 pillars is the biggest challenge for you today? Heijoshin, Zanshin, Michi, or Fudoshin? I want to know. I invite you now to watch this video that is appearing on your screen. Your journey continues here. Thank you very much for your support. Until the next video.